Good afternoon. Welcome to the lunch hour and the Entrepreneur's Journey Live. I'm Natalie Fairchild, and here's my crap co-host Martin Noches.
How you doing, Nat?
I'm good, and besides, pointing to the wrong direction on the screen, we had a few technical difficulties before we went on live, so hopefully it'll be much smoother. But super excited about this topic. Getting the stories we have in our head, our scripts about money, our psychology about money, and how that gets in the way of our business as entrepreneurs. And it's definitely there. We know that. We've talked about that a little bit before. One example I've used is not wanting to buy the certain kind of car because it said a certain kind of thing about me, or I didn't want people to think that this, or I was above them or below them or whatever.
Yeah.
So it shows up. It shows
We
up.
all have programming of sorts, right, around things, and
Yeah.
money is one of those where it's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't take much to figure out what somebody's programming around money is.
Right. And what if we could release this and have a more potential to have money come to us? This would be a great thing. And we have an expert here, Becky Clabaugh. I'm so excited. I've actually done one of her workshops and talking about how to find that script or that story that might be holding you back, how to deal with it and move on and become more successful than maybe you were. Becky, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me. This is so fun.
Yes. And Becky is from Colorado Springs, Colorado. So she's having a sunny day as we are in Pacific Northwest. So let me tell you a little bit about Becky before we get started. So she is a no nonsense certified life coach and emotional regulation expert, which we'll talk a little bit more about that. Her mission is to help women rejig their outdated stories that are stuck in their brains and nervous systems about under-earning, worthiness, and visibility. And with over 3 decades of training and experience, she knows how to unpack the sneaky hidden agendas when it comes to the income plateaus and when revenue generating activities fall flat. Clearing the path to fiscal resilience and teaching entrepreneurs how to have a better relationship with money is her jam. So she starts fun, she ends fun. So that's a lot. But like, how did you get to this, Becky? I know you've had a lot of background of trauma therapy, not trauma yourself. We all have our trauma. As far as working with people with trauma and that sort of thing. How did you come to the money portion of it?
Yeah, it's such a great journey, honestly. Our wounds can be our greatest gifts. And so I'll just start with that. So I graduated from Metropolitan University in Denver with a degree in human services. I was a drug and alcohol addiction counselor, and that was really tough because I'm an empath and I'm a really high feeler.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to bring everybody home. So I quickly shifted. I added a minor, which was holistic health and wellness education. And that's where I learned about the body and just how it does keep the score. That's a true thing. And there was a significant amount of trauma in my 20s when I was graduating, right about the same time my father was killed in a car accident. He was 47. And that was my first introduction to trauma to my nervous system. And less than 18 months later, my best friend was also killed in a car accident. It was just a really fun thing that happened during a formative. My brain still wasn't developed at that time. I was a young adult and still trying to manage the tools and things I had. So I just recognized the nervous system and was very interested in diving deeper into my degree and human behavior and the potential of just, what happens to our brain. So to forward fast why I've shifted to money.
Yeah.
During COVID, I got certified to be a life coach in 2019 because I really I love people so much in personal development. And I was a first degree black belt in Taekwondo with our youngest daughter. And I just wanted to do
Wow.
something different because I could see again, it came up. I used EFT tapping, the emotional freedom technique, with some women who had been traumatized. That's like situational awareness was my jam for teaching women parking lot drills. And so
Oh, gotcha.
classes. And then COVID came. So everybody was triggered and we didn't understand what was happening. So when I was doing just basic life coaching online with women, we would be talking about money and I would see a visceral reaction. And that's why I thought, okay, there is something here. I'm very curious what it is. So I took my $1,000 stimulus check and that's how I started my business. And
Wow.
I have had no debt and everything I've invested in has been with cash. And that's just kind of how I roll. But when I would talk to women, I would notice that there would be a lot of reactions, lots of feelings, lots of thoughts. And so I learned more about the psychology of money. And that's how
Wow.
it started.
Okay, great. I didn't even know that story. So tell me, you saw a visceral reaction in
Mhm.
people. Tell me what that visceral reaction looked like. Like,
Yeah.
I'm curious because I know what happens to me, but I'd love to see what your perception is when you're talking to different women.
Yeah. Well, I know through my training that there is a mind-body connection. And with money, the way I was trained specifically with emotional freedom technique to help our nervous system calm down, there was a mind-body money connection. And so it would be a form of getting angry, looking at a P&L, not being able to talk about it, crying, being able to be like, oh, I can't, like you feel like you are actually in a fight or flight stress response. And so that's where the subconscious brain tries to come in and keep you safe. So those are
Yeah.
the things, it's that anxiety, that the feeling of panic, and sometimes we don't even know it. Just like,
Yeah.
those habits we get into, we're like, why am I doing that again? Well, it could be
Right.
because you're having a visceral reaction.
Yeah, for sure. And Martin knows very well that when I started looking at my P&Ls, I definitely had a visceral reaction.
Wow.
I don't like numbers to begin with. I'm more the dreamer, the creative one. So add that on top of the money psychology of my own story. And I'm just like, oh, unless it's green, I don't want to look at it. So,
Yeah. Okay, so there you go. There is an indicator that you're getting feedback based from an emotion, probably a negative one. Then we create stories based upon subconscious vows we took as little people. For example, watching your parents balance their checkbook at the kitchen table.
yeah.
It could have been really scary, or in my family, it was unspoken. We did not talk about money. And so I don't even know what the heck I was doing when I was in college. I was just like, man, you're a credit card, or, I have a really thick checkbook. So it must mean that that's how much money I have. I would spend it. Yeah, but those behaviors got me into trouble. And that's where I was an expert with the behavior change. I love human behavior. I love understanding, with the drug and alcohol addiction pieces. I had a cognitive tool that we used in order to shift a behavior, but there really needs to be the regulation in the subconscious and the nervous system when it gets into a fight or flight stress response.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Perfect.
what's interesting about that is that you could present two different people with the exact same data point, right? And they would choose something different.
Correct.
So
Yep. hmm Yep.
in
Think
your
about
in your line of work, right, you see a lot of people getting connected with that kind of stuff. Like, are they able to realize when those early things happened, or is that part of what you help them do?
That's what I help them do. A lot of times I have clients say, I know something is wrong. I've been to budget classes, I've been to therapy, which therapy could be part of the tool that needs to be
Yes.
managed. I am not a licensed mental health provider. I am a life coach and I do have training, but I just want to make that really clear. The difference is that we can use tools, somatic tools that could be, soma means body. And so we really get into that body mind connection so that they're collaborating together with the tools, different techniques. you can really address the tension and things that can be locked away in our body. We don't even know that's there. So I take people on a very gentle ride going through that first pillar. There's 4 of them. And the first one is that early childhood paradigm. And that's where we just unpack the stories, like dipping into the kitchen table in a really gentle way. It's like it's through the titration. Remember from chemistry, it's just those little sips, so we don't overstimulate yourself in that place of like it's not where you're absolutely in control, that you get to decide what the next step is. And that's the great thing about being a grown-up. You get to decide and then bless and release those old paradigms. Then we create a new paradigm. And in that, I have a 90-day program that's just one-on-one, because it's really deep work. That's really empowering, that we rejig those thoughts, behaviors, and the patterns that just no longer serve you. And we bless and release the well-intending things from our childhood. That's why I've got a picture back there of my little person. That's me when I was about 3, and that's a bugaboo. That's where she tries to run my business. She tries to be the CEO.
So you have the term bugaboo, which you might want to try and trademark that. That's cute. But what's your definition of a bugaboo?
Yeah, a bugaboo is just subconscious thoughts and feelings that we create in order to avoid a negative emotion about money. And there's 6 of them. So they come in a form of, you had mentioned the underearning. A lot of time for women, we undercut, give a discount. Oh, we can trade, or those kinds of things. And it's a sneaky thing that's just trying to keep you safe. But there is a way that you can heal it. A lot of times it falls under the umbrella of people pleasing.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever met a single starting entrepreneur that didn't underprice themselves at the beginning.
Male or female, you're correct,
Yeah.
Martin. And I absolutely respect that, from that place of just observing our behavior and taking a stop where we can be kind and gentle and have compassion about, you know what, actually, my value is what this price tag is. And the end result is we're going to work on that together. But it always is our responsibility to get the result that we're looking for.
Yeah,
we can't get caught up in a victimized role, especially when our nervous system feels like it's been triggered by a trauma. Now, a trauma could be a small t trauma. I'll give you an example. Were you a Girl Scout, Natalie?
My daughters were.
Okay.
And I was a co-leader.
Okay. Martin, were you a scout or anything like that?
I was.
Okay. So you had popcorn and cookies to sell, right? So you could go to camp. And
But
as a little 8-year-old,
it was in a different country, so slightly different things.
Okay.
Oh,
But
I'd like to know.
tell me what it was.
Well, we didn't do any of that. We didn't fundraise actually,
Oh,
but there were community activities.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember it ever involving selling anything, but there were some level of community activities. I get your point though.
Okay. Well, thanks for going along for the ride. I appreciate you. Well, and I think you'll be able to relate in any form what my example is, because as young children setting goals that grown-ups want us to hit, it's like, oh gosh, okay, these goals are whatever it is, I better do it. And so at our troop, we all had a goal. And of course, I'm a little bit of a overachiever because I'm very goal motivated. And we set this big goal, and I was going to sell the most cookies because that's the way I roll. And it was just like, yeah, let's go. Well, everybody set out in the neighborhood ready to go. And I got strep throat. I got really sick. So I kind of missed the window for the big sales, and I was disappointed, and that happened. But what really struck my nervous system as a little person, at the end of the year, banquet awards, everybody got a badge but me.
Oh.
So I created a story as a little person that was really scary. In addition to, Natalie, I did not feel very confident in math. So I also created a story. I was bad with numbers. And it just created this long string of lies. If you do this for me, you guys, this is a great thing, is we always need to evaluate what we really believe. Yes. And if you write down the word believe and you scratch out the first 2 letters, BE, and the last 2 letters, VE, inside the belief, sometimes it's a lie. And that's the word that's left in believe.
Interesting. Thank you for spelling that out for me too, because I'm not really good with spelling either.
Yeah, it's sneaky, but we have lots of tools to help us get regulated and have that opportunity to create a new story.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And there's been so much talk, which is such a great thing. And I don't know if COVID brought this out or we're just becoming to really take a look at the mind and the body but the nervous system, that word, you hear it all the time. Empath, you hear it all the time.
Yeah.
And it's really amazing the work that is being done to kind of put it out there and learn more about it, and how it can really affect your decisions as a business owner and how it can, yeah.
Definitely. Yes. So when we are in a stress response, we don't even know that we're actually in it. That is where we can get into an opportunity to just pause. Because again, I think this is a writer downer, is that emotions are feedback, negative emotions and positive emotions. And a lot of times we just, like for me, with the Girl Scout example, that deep disappointment, not really having my own back, trusting myself or understanding that that goal was an opportunity to learn. But my parents didn't know that. I mean, I grew up in the 60s and 70s and the 80s. And that concept of, gosh, like compare and despair was really bad. And Martin also to talk about like the comparison of my sister and I grew up in the same household. We sat at the same kitchen table, but her experience with money is different than mine.
Yeah. Yeah,
100%.
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, so l- let's try to take that example and stretch it, right? So for somebody watching or listening, okay, you blew your goal because you were sick. You created some sort of belief around that. How did
Mhm.
that affect you later when you were like out in the real world trying to do something? How did that get expressed?
It still happens every darn day. I'm a human and I still apply my own strategies and tools. One thing I know is I'm learning to trust myself, have my own back. And also being in that place, I have a deep commitment to what I'm doing. I get some sucker punches quite a bit. That's another bugaboo. And that comes in forms of health circumstances. It comes in forms of coaching my clients when they have an unexpected bill come through. And it is building that resilience that we talked about in my bio. That is my end game goal, is to help myself and my clients have that resilience for, we can say, oh, it's COVID and oh, it's strep throat, or yes, those are circumstances. But again, it goes into that process of how we unpack a belief so that it's sustainable and helpful for us.
Yeah. Now you said that sometimes people don't even know that they're
Mhm.
going into the stress response. Is that is there a way to tune into that so that you do know? Because sometimes I feel like I can tell, like just driving home from something, I was like, okay, I'm feeling something. Let me
Yeah,
watch my thoughts. What's going on?
correct. The best thing I think for you to do is be able to watch your breath. Let's check into how you're breathing. And that is one of the tools I use. It's the somatic tool. It's trauma informed breath work, because a lot of times we get that a load in we're like shallow breathing. I didn't even know that I was doing that until I had a circumstance last year that I went through a therapeutic process. And that's why I learned more about it. The benefits of breath work and being able to go into that place where you can really transform what's going on in your nervous system is that we can connect to our emotions and change the response to them. Noticing, okay, body, hi, body. And also just being able to give yourself like some compassion. I always love to put my hands on my heart. A lot of times people don't even know what you're doing, or if you're sitting in a meeting, you can put your hand on your heart, or, like, you don't even know that I'm really putting my hand on my heart, because I'm just like resting my elbow in the crook of my chair right here.
Right.
So being able to breathe through that, it revitalizes your organs. It helps you get into an hypoxic state. Sometimes is what's happening when we're shallow breathing and we're not even oxygenating our brain, especially in the car. Man, you can get into a fight or flight stress response in the car. And what I've decided at that point too, is just giving my brain access to higher power to just pause and breathe. How does that land for you, Natalie?
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't think about the breathing. Usually it's a sensation for me.
Mm.
I just feel a little angst or a little tightness. And it's like, okay, what's that? What's going on? And I try and watch my thoughts in my brain. And as they swirl, I can feel a little bit more like a little trigger, like, oh, that's it. Okay. let's take that piece and work on that. And money is emotional.
Very much so. That's why I love what I do. Yes, I have such compassion and deep empathy for it. What you're talking about too is a lot of times we want to use a top-down approach. Oh, what am I thinking? Oh, better flip that around. Sometimes we can flip into toxic positivity when really our body just is giving us feedback that there's an emotion that we need to feel it all the way through. A lot of times we just want to stuff it down. So with breath work, just with that little tool right there, it's not a little tool, quite frankly, but it's something we have accessible to us all the time. And it's a bottom-up approach. So when we get into that place where in our body, the somatic piece of it, being able to cleanse your energy and your clarity and get back into relationship with your body, then you can actually use that bottom up approach. So then you can start to notice, what am I thinking? What am I believing? What am I feeling? And then feeling that all the way through.
Oh, okay. So that's good. So you're saying if I sense something, start the breathing and then work through it, because then you'll be able to work through it a little bit better.
So let's talk about what happens then, right? So I'm with you on there's a lot of automatism happening, right? People are just sort of going through their days, and sometimes they feel like shit, sometimes they feel okay, and sometimes we're aware enough to even be like, I feel like shit right now. And they may have access to something like that, right? Okay, so take a breath. There's plenty of really good scientific data on what you were suggesting of people who put their hands in their chest, basically just makes you aware of your state of elevated anxiety, right? You see a lot of famous people doing it lately. Pedro Pascal was talking about it. But what happens then? Okay, so now I'm aware. Now I'm a little more concentrating on my breathing. And now, hopefully, maybe there's a chance I'm realizing that it was this conversation about money. It was this bill that I know is sitting on my desk, right? It was something about money that gave me the feeling, whatever that was, and I did something about it. So now I'm a little more centered and I can at least make the connection. What happens then?
Yeah, that's really good, because we are most of the time operating in anxiety and stress as if it's normal.
Sure.
Right. We're so used to it.
Correct.
So you get used to it.
100%. So that right there, it takes practice. And it's not a quick fix. People, I think a lot of times, like I just shared with you, when you asked me, how did I have not arrived. I'm a human. I've mastered a lot of things. Absolutely. And I'm able to be on this call today, even with some news that I received earlier this morning. That was, it was like, wow, okay, I'm going to go over here. We get back in that little chair over there. I get out some scripture, and I also breathe, and I get really connected with my very tight circle of support, people who really trust me. But the one person I know I can count on is myself. I got my back, and I can really get into that place because I really want to be able. I have a commitment and a desire to get into a place of emotion regulation. And here's what I want to offer up. I think sometimes we can really get jacked up with the coaching world. Ooh, I'm going to get up. Here I go. Because I would really love to respectfully say that if you're working with a business coach or a strategist or something, and you are getting triggered with your P&L, and they say, oh, well, you have a mindset. It's a money mindset. I call bullshit on it, because I think a lot of times it's actually you're not regulated. The process I would like to offer is the best way to make money is when you're emotionally regulated. So then you can lovingly come into a conversation with yourself in a journal, or a conversation with another person who will hold space and not want to fix anything for you. Then you come into the practice of what's possible to move through the next thing. That's where mindset practice comes in. It's a layered effect. It's not always just straight to the mindset piece.
Yeah. So diving a little bit deeper, taking a look.
Being in that state of awareness is our friend, Martin. I think that that's the answer to the question you're asking me. Is awareness always gives us an opportunity to be able to just check in and see what's happening, again, from that place of, the behavior. A lot of times what we want to do is we look at that P&L, and then we're going to throw a Hail Mary, and we're going to overspend. Because if I invest in this thing, this fancy coach, this fancy program, all the XYZs, and I go deeper into debt, that could be a tendency no different than over drinking, overeating, over Netflixing, over all the things.
Darn it.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, pretty obviously, your approach is deeper on that side than mine. But I don't think we're in disagreement around what people are
Mm.
needing to do, right? It's not going to be like anybody who goes, "Hey, just change your mindset," is the scammer, right? Because you can't just change your mindset, right? There's a reason it's there, right? It got put together in a certain way, right? Some choices happened and they layered up, and then as you do, you forget you made said choices,
Mhm.
and and we're like in agreement with that. For me, it's there's a fundamental relationship between money and the how you get it,
Or how
Mm.
you've gotten it.
or how you've gotten it, right? Because there's monies that hurt you after you got them, but the what is it that you do
Mm.
to get it? I think is the way to heal people's relationship with it when it's
Mhm.
broken.
So
You
Oh.
give us
know,
an example, Martin.
well, I've told people all the time, right? You can make $100 in a shitty job that is soul sucking,
Mhm.
or you can make 10 working on your own on something you freaking love, and those $10 are gonna feel like half a million,
Mhm.
right? Because there's again, right, there's a lot more to your relationship with money, right? For a lot of us, it entails a little purpose. For a lot of us, it entails a little bit of like, why am I here, right? Because if it's to pay bills, that is not it.
Oh, that's so good. Yes, because
Mhm.
I think, and this is what's really tricky about being an entrepreneur is we do have our guts in this. We got our heart and our soul, man. It's like having another child. We love what
Absolutely.
we do. And then when we look and it's like, oh my gosh, the thing I just launched that took weeks and love and care and all the things, and it was a big fat goose egg. Nobody wanted it.
Yep.
Then what we can either do is make a decision to either throw in the towel or go sit in the corner in the fetal position and start suck our thumb or Netflix and drink and all the things. We can do that. Or we can also say, okay, what's next? What can I learn from this? It's the basic scientific method from third grade. And it's what worked, what didn't, what am I going to do different? And I have an
Mhm.
example of that. I have a client, she's was really ready to step into 500,000 and she had a big launch coming and gosh, she had, I don't know, email list of maybe 1,000. We were just like, oh, this is going to be so good. We had it regulated. Everything was going to be amazing. Big fat goose egg. She lost
Mhm.
all confidence in herself, was very sad. She was able to have her feelings all the way through. She did a bunch of the cognitive process that I have her go through in a digital worksheet in a portal that we work on together off of social media. I totally held space for her. So she was able to have her feelings all the way through. She went through the process and then she went to her mastermind and she said, all right, look at this copy with me. Where's the copywriter? Where are the marketing experts in here? Who are the people? She got into a mastermind and they helped her rejig it. She pitched it again, sold 12,
Nice.
and her goal was 14. So
Nice.
that's where we can just really go into that
Mm.
place again. She had her own back, but it is the story of she was like, I hate this. This business is stupid. It's not working. What am I thinking? Yes, she had all the thoughts and the feelings. And we just, Natalie and I have had conversations too of a sucker punch.
Yes.
And it's like
Yes.
all the way through
Yes.
feeling it.
Yes.
Yeah, and I love saying to my clients, it's all sucker punches. There's nothing that is not, right? Even when you design something and it went exactly that way, what follows is gonna be a sucker punch because you limited your design, right? You got to a place where like, okay, this is exactly how I designed it, and then what happens right after is not it, right?
Well,
So it,
yeah, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I get so excited because you're bringing up a very valid point. It's the emotion. Now, here's the deal: is the emotion like I'm gonna throw in the towel? Is that deep, deep disappointment that could be from Girl Scout cookies in the third grade?
100%,
Yeah, so
right?
it's like this is too scary. And here's the deal: is that you're on the very hairy edge of just cracking the code. We never know, and
Exactly.
darn it, it's money absolutely is emotional. And here's my favorite thing is you should probably talk to a budgeting expert or a financial pro to really help you with the tools. But I really believe when you get your nervous system regulated, then you can put your systems in place. If you're trying to do the systems that's not working, it could be because you're unregulated and you can't even think.
Yeah.
For sure. And there's so much around it that goes into play at putting these things together. I heard you talking about parents sitting on a kitchen table balancing a checkbook. And I can tell you right now that culturally,
Yep.
eh, socially, ethnically, that doesn't happen for a lot of people at all. Like that is not even a scenario that most people can even relate,
Mhm.
right? So they put their money images together in an entirely different way.
Yep. That's true.
And that's something we don't know walking around the world and encountering people. And like, if you give, and I'm not talking to you two, but I'm talking to our audience, if you give advice to anyone around money matters, around building businesses, around doing anything that involves basically the confronting who someone has, who someone is by their own design, right?
Mhm.
Unconscious or conscious, beware that there's a lot you don't know. Right? There's a
Correct.
Mhm.
lot you don't know on how that person got put
Mhm.
together and what they can and cannot do objectively.
Very
Mhm.
There's
good.
a lot of things that are like obvious. You should totally do this, right? And they just can't. They don't have the access to it. And what you have to provide is that access,
I
And
love that.
that's going back
Mm.
and
right?
Mhm.
revisiting some of that stuff.
Sometimes it's going back, but for me is it's a lot to do with the healing around
Mhm.
why do you even want to do this? Like those are some of the questions I ask people that work with me. Why do you even want to do
Yeah.
this? Oh, because I really want to hit 1 million this year. See, that's not gonna be it. I can tell you right now that that's not gonna be enough. Right?
Mhm.
It's not gonna cut it.
Because
Yeah.
we're going to
You
want to raise that bar all
Oh,
the
you may
time.
no, well, maybe for sure. I mean, that's how people get about money. But it's like when it gets shitty, when the sucker punches arrive, I want to break 1 million. It's not gonna cut it. It's just
mhm.
Right.
not
I
gonna
see what
be
you're
enough,
saying.
right?
It's not going to be enough to keep going.
There's this phenomena, right, that I kind of love seeing because it's causing people to get interested in entrepreneurship, but it's also a bit of a trap, right? You see
Mm.
a lot of people in their 20s doing three different gigs, right? The side hustle thing. And I'm like huge on the side hustle. Yeah, sure, you should do it, right? Learn how to run a business, right? Learn how to have taxes of your own, learn how to build a P&L, right? Learn all the things, right? But the side hustle is not the thing you're going to do. You're going to have to, at some point, create your own.
Mm.
Mhm.
Mm.
If you
Mm.
don't create your own at some point, right? Something that it is you, it is who you are, that's not going to be it. There's not going to be enough to push you through the
Mhm.
sucker punches.
Yeah. For real. I love that so much. You asked me too, when people don't know that they have this, I call it a hidden money agenda.
Mhm.
And so I go through a very specific process that is evidence based, and an engineer actually created it. So the process that we go through is very gentle. And I use the EFT tapping and then the breath work. And so a lot of guided imagery and visualization. And so then we embody the next phase when we can heal and move past without going into like evidence from our past, from that place of what's true now. We create a whole new identity, honestly, and we create your own beautiful paradigm so you can get out there and shine brightly. And it feels really good. It feels good in your nervous system. I did not have any social media at all whatsoever when I first started, and it didn't light me up. Networking is my thing. I build deep relationships with people. I love them hard, don't I, Natalie? I mean, I
Yes,
really
you
do.
do.
And
You
so people
do.
have to really trust me because money is emotional, and there's shame, and there's unspoken judgment, and there's rules, and there's vows that are, I mean, there are things as little kids that we consented to without our permission, because we're children. And so
Mhm.
some things are great, some things not so great. And we go through a lot of those things with love and care and no judgment. And then we just get to decide how we would like to embody a new paradigm. And it's very kind and gentle, and there's no judgment in it. It's all about curiosity and being committed to that process. And what I wanted to say about I have a desire, and I like to coach my clients to play with words, a desire versus a discipline. Like some people don't like to balance their checkbook, and that's a discipline. So it's really negative. What if we just do one simple little flip of that and just like, would you desire to know what your numbers are so you know what how to hit your goals and create really flowery, yummy, positive feelings about that?
Are you telling me I have to balance my checkbook?
I,
I mean, not business. I mean, just personal. No.
it's good to
Anyway,
know, money needs
yeah,
direction, Natalie.
exactly. And you know what? The little angst that I felt driving this morning was, as I'm thinking, it was about money. It was about spending a certain amount and feeling good about that. And did I feel like that was okay? So it's kind of interesting to even be talking about this. Now, you have a philosophy of glimmers and triggers.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's a real thing. I'm not really sure who created it, and I need to find out, but I love it so much because I love the idea of creating new neural pathways in our brain. And I have a lot of personal experience about brain health and some things in regards to healing, but triggers are something that we continue to just like, oh, that triggered me. She triggered me. The things trigger.
Don't trigger me.
Yeah. What I like to offer is the opposite of that, which is a glimmer. Right now, I am experiencing a glimmer with both of you because we're connected. I feel joy. I feel curious. I'm very happy. I'm creating space for myself to be like, wow, I get to do this because I'm an entrepreneur and I'm sharing my gifts and my talents with these two beautiful people who also are entrepreneurs and have amazing gifts and talents. How can we raise the energy on this planet to a higher vibration? That's a glimmer for me. And so it's also building new neural pathways in my brain as well as yours and people who are listening, because I hope that this feels joyful for them too and curious.
Yeah. And hopeful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely hopeful.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. So focusing on the glimmers more than the triggers.
And it's from that perspective of not so much the Pollyanna, but it's just like, oh, noticing. It's like seeing a bunny. To me, it's like, oh, spring's here. Seeing a daffodil in my front flower bed is like, oh, that's so great. Being present is what I'd like to offer from that perspective, just noticing and being present.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great.
What,
Martin.
so what would you say a practice is, right?
Mhm.
Something an individual can actively engage in to be present, because that is something that nobody will ever deny is
Mhm.
useful,
Correct.
right?
Thank you for asking. Mhm.
Very
Yeah.
few people are going to be able to be like, you know what I need to do today? I need to be present and just be that.
Yeah.
So what would you say is a practical approach to being present?
That is such a good question, especially when you're in a response where you're getting feedback from a negative emotion. Being present is just like, I want to, run down the street and scream and yell. Yeah, well, you can do that too. But what my point is, what I wanted to share is, again, the breath and just taking a moment to notice that you actually, when things feel really scary, check your pulse. You're still alive. And you can really get grounded in that way. I call it a pattern interrupter, just to notice, like I either touch my ring or I do something. That's something that you can do that's quick. No one's going to notice. Another thing would just be to put on a piece of paper, dump your brain out there. What are you actually thinking? A lot of times we don't even know what we're thinking. And many times we are thinking multiple things about all kinds of different circumstances. And so just pause for just a second. It will take you less than a minute to write down whatever you're thinking and noticing. Today, what I noticed when I was just practicing my breath, it took 3 minutes. I noticed my body was telling me I need some space right now.
Interesting. Yeah. Now, the key is remembering that when you have like a little trigger.
Mm-hmm. And that's
because when I'm in a great space,
yeah.
I notice the daffodils and the spring flowers along
Mm,
the road that are just like pop up and
right.
that kind of thing. But also when I feel triggered,
Mhm.
I tend to take a deep breath, but then check into the five senses.
Mm.
What am I seeing? What am I smelling? What am I tasting? What am I hearing? And that really, really helps me to be present. And when you're present, isn't it the fact that when you're present, you can't be in the future or the past, the fear or the guilt, shame?
Mm.
The present, you can't do both at the same time. So it's an easy, quick gift for yourself to get out of that.
I love that so much. Yeah, it is for sure. And I had an experience a while ago that my olfactory nerve was cut, so I can't taste or smell. And so I am at a deficit. If someone who is blind can't see, I mean, I have such compassion for that. When you have a sensory that has been
Cut off.
breathing from still.
Yeah.
It's yeah, so I understand, we have circumstances and I can make it mean lots of things. But I think what's important is just to really honestly get to know yourself. We talked about before, Martin, that the relationship with money, well, it starts with a relationship with yourself. And a lot of times it's an inner worthy and deserving that we don't even recognize that we can actually elevate from that perspective of, hi, body. It goes back to that again, what we talked about earlier when we had our first part of our conversation, but to notice a way to interrupt your pattern, especially if you're noticing that you're going down a negative path that's not really serving you so well. And again, not going back to the Pollyanna or the positive, toxic positivity where it's like, I'm fine, everything's great, it's all lovely, and things are not. I think also having a support network is really important. Having community where you can be honest with people without any judgment.
Right, for sure. Yeah, no
Yeah,
covering up.
I'll just add, for me and people I work with, we talk about being present every so often. And one of the things that I say, because the question is usually, okay, well, how do I do it? Right. And for me is
Mm.
you gotta learn when you're not,
Mm,
right?
Well, it goes
Because
back to the sucker punch. If you're thinking about it, as a first degree, as a black belt, as a boxer, as anything, you got to be ready. And how do you get ready? You practice, and you practice.
and you practice getting hit too, so you know how
Correct.
it feels.
Well, for sure, because then now you know how to duck, you know how to sway, you know how to be prepared, you know how to be
Yes.
situationally aware.
So realizing you're not present, people don't get, is the quickest way to be present.
Yes, and here's what I think is fascinating. The next time you guys are in a parking lot, notice how many people are actually on their phone walking to their car, completely not
yeah,
aware or in the present moment. That's where you
yeah,
get a sucker punch.
yeah,
Right.
literally.
With your
Yeah,
business, if you're not aware of how your systems and your tools and how your back end of your platform works, those kinds of things, you can be that's your responsibility to be situationally aware.
yeah,
So we kind of started working, talking about this a little bit, but if people, are to understand that their relationship with money is probably tainted by whatever they
Mhm.
put together, yet money and financial goals, financial metrics are, one of the most recognizable measures of success in entrepreneurship, potentially.
yeah.
How should people measure their financial success, right?
Oh,
What should be an approach that is not damaging? Because,
that
like I said, there's a lot of bad examples of that. There's like, hit your first million by this, right? Or I work with startups too, and I don't think there's a more toxic term than unicorn, for the
yeah.
startups, right? Everybody's like, you got $1 billion valuation and you're a startup. That's a unicorn. Yeah, and if you take just the next extra step and look at the statistics on that, 84% of them don't exist anymore, right?
Right.
So that was almost a death sentence when you became a unicorn.
Mm,
So
good.
what should people do to measure or to aspire to measure their financial success?
That's a brilliant question because if you look at it, measurement by your bank account or your P&L, that is all neutral. And we all can agree in the court of law what the number says. It's up to you, again, that belief inside that lie, if it's good or bad, if it's successful or not. You get to decide. And what if just not going into debt for the next thing, you pay cash for it next time? That could be a method of a measurement of success. It could also be, this hitting a million, hitting all the things. Now, what's interesting about that, I work with 6 and 7 figure owners, and they tell me it's not enough. So it's so fascinating to me. We all potentially think that that's really successful. For other people, it's a hot mess and it's an emotional nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess
For sure.
That's a question for you to answer on your own, is what does success mean for you? To me, it means I was able to take time this morning. I gave X amount of money to my church, and I went over and I helped a group of ladies build mason jars full of soup mix for our pantry, our food pantry. That to me is hella successful. I love
it. Right? Because you can. You built a business that supports you being able to do that other stuff you like.
Absolutely. And that to me was abundant. I had a lot of joy. I felt it was just such a good feeling for me to be able to give back in a way that I really love. And, I really feel if we have something greater than us to believe in and to just really
focus on.
Yes. I mean, come on. I think we do get all trapped up in the numbers and scaling and all the things. Listen, I have so much respect for people who are, Martin, maybe you have you'd like to speak to this too, is that when you are building an entrepreneurial endeavor, I have so much respect for people who also have a W-2, earning job as they're building that bridge so that they can actually have some breathing room to allow that business to live and thrive on it.
100%. That's definitely the way to do it. Mm-hmm. And I talk to people all the time, and I say, side hustle, sure, you want to do a side hustle, do a side business.
Yeah.
Right? Build a side business, and it will ultimately, you'll determine when you can drop the other one. You will determine what that looks like too.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that. Yes. And giving, you receive 100%.
Yes. From Barbara. And we also have Candace and Liska with Harper and Gracie listening in and commenting. So thank you so much for doing that.
So we probably going to have to start wrapping up here, Becky, but if somebody is listening to you and is interested in doing the kind of work you do, what would be a way for them to connect? What would be a way for them to get access?
Well, thank you for asking. I appreciate that. The best way is take the quiz. You can just go to my website. It's my name, BeckyClabaugh.com. And right there on the front, it talks about those bugaboos, and just see which one you have. And you'll be able to have an invitation to come to once a month. I do a speed networking group for entrepreneurs, and we uncover some sneaky bugaboo that we have about sharing an offer. Let's just face it, marketing, it's relational marketing, anything. We're always there to sell something. We're there to share something is basically what I should say. So we talk about what we have to share, and we dip into different groups, and we do speed networking to build strong referral networks and strategic partnerships. My business is really relationship based and referral based. And Natalie, you've been there before, and it's great. It goes really fast. And I've been doing it 3 years. We've got over 30 some people that come, and they're regulars. And there's some really great relationships that are happening there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So Becky Clabaugh. So it's BECKY and then last name CLABAUGH.com. So take a look at that if you're interested. Thank you so much, Becky. I think this topic of just the nervous system and past stuff and how it affects every aspect, not just personally in our relationships, but our business as well, and what we think about money, which is just a great topic to keep on our forefront and realize and become self-aware. So really, really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure. And thank you so much for tuning in today. Our next show is May 1st. Yep, that's right. May 1st is just around the corner. So May Day, and my daughter London's birthday. How's that? At noon. So remember to tune in. We'll send out some information about that. And we look forward to having you join us again. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you. See you soon.
Bye bye.